Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time of the day you watch us here at Dr. Rob, Spirits and the Supernatural. I want to welcome my co-host, Patrick Welsh. Afternoon, Patrick.
How's it going, Dr. Rob?
I'm great. You had a very adventurous weekend from what you told me.
Yeah, it was nice to go to the casino and win. I mean, that's always one of the points of doing it, and got a few things done. We caught the local, they're called the WEBN fireworks in Cincinnati. So, yeah, it was a pretty nice holiday weekend. Got a little rest, but time to get busy again. And we did do our show Sunday, which was pretty interesting. Unfortunately, we lost the video feed, so it's just audio. We do apologize for that.
I think probably after our 20th show doing this, we'll have it perfect. It'll be like everything will be like run like clockwork. It'll be smooth. It'll be great. Everything is good. So.
Well, yeah, it's a stepping stone process, definitely.
It's a lot easier to do radio than it is to do, video and audio at the same time. When we had the radio show, just hitting a couple of buttons and that was it. But now it's you coordinating your camera, me coordinating my camera. It's kind of a process, all on its own. So, well, I
Yeah.
want to welcome you to the show. And, we spoke to your friend Missy's, pet that had crossed over on our last show. And so I'm really happy that, she found some peace. We spoke afterwards and she was really happy to be able to connect with her, her departed one. So that was a great show.
And one quick interest to comment on that. At the end, when I asked if she had any comment on Duke, um, which basically I guess she didn't. That's why you said the family recipe is safe. I thought that was kind of funny because Duke was the other dog that Missy has, and she was always kind of a little resentful of Duke coming along because she was kind of there first, and the fact that she still didn't make any mention of Duke, I thought that was kind of funny because that's how she really was when she was alive too. Duke was kind of always the threat to her because he was the puppy that came along afterward that she originally got to keep her company, but she liked being kind of the one owner dog. So
Yeah, I think most dogs do. I mean, there are exceptions to the rules, of course, but I think that with Libby, she was, all about Libby and all about her life, and yeah. So,
yeah, so I thought that was funny that that still came through from the other side because usually when we're talking with deceased people, they've learned to let a lot of that go. I guess in the animal realm where they go, they still hold on to a little bit of that or something. I don't know.
yeah, definitely. Well, I'm excited about today's show. You have someone in mind. Who is that person?
Well, actually, it's been for probably a couple months now. I think it was around June all of a sudden. Yeah, we had this individual, which we'll disclose in a minute, that he kept popping up in uncanny places. Just, I mean, whether I was watching TV, um, and I would just turn it on, it would just happen to generally be on a show where he was on, or even the web. Somehow, I'd come across him. Even when you're searching unrelated stuff, there'd be something with a link to him. And this individual has been dead since 1999 is when he crossed over, and I think a lot of us are familiar with him. I was a kind of a big fan of the whole original Star Trek series and a lot of the spin-offs that came afterward. And of course, Dr. McCoy or Bones was one of the main characters in there, which a lot of us liked. And Deforest Kelley has been seeming to pop up a lot. So I wanted to see if you could check in with him to see if he has been trying to come through or if he has a message or just wanted to update us on how things have been for him.
Okay, just give me a second, and we'll definitely try to make contact. I was telling you prior to taping this that I was woken up at 3 o'clock this morning with three voices on the side of my bed on the opposite side of where I sleep. And I was like, oh, please, guys, come on, give me a break. I really am trying to sleep here. And I was really tired from the weekend. And, so I heard these voices and I woke up and I was like, what are they saying? It was like almost like a whisper. And it was like so jumbled up, I couldn't quite hear what they were saying. But I really do believe that it was, Forrest Kelley coming through. We had spoken a couple of days ago about the possibility of doing the show. And so, yeah, I do feel him here with me now. He just, he has like a very soft-spoken voice. I can tell you that. I mean, he's very calm, very peaceful, very, matter of fact. He's kind of just like, his words are just like one word at a time. Some of the spirits we've spoken to in the past have just been like, these massive sentences. But he's just like sitting back, taking his time, just, I don't know how to describe it other than that.
Very nice. So he's not arguing with you, saying he's a doctor and not a spirit or anything.
No, I get a sense that, he was a real professional when he was alive. He always, took everything very seriously. He was always very exact with his words, chose his words very, very carefully, and just made his point, in the fewest words possible. I don't really believe that, and I don't know him as a person, being alive, but it's just the impression I get from, speaking to him in the spirit world.
Okay. Now, even though I was pretty familiar with a lot of his performances in Star Trek, when I thought he was trying to come through, I usually just try and do a little bit of just overall background research so that I have some, relevant questions to try and ask. Now I know originally he actually got a lot of his films start in cowboy westerns, and then at one point originally he offered the role of Mr. Spock, but took the role of Dr. McCoy over that. So, maybe he wanted to elaborate on a little more of that. It seemed like obviously he was right. It worked out pretty well, but what was his view on that?
He says that he just didn't feel like he had the right look, for Mr. Spock. He says that, he was offered that role, but, the role of the Doctor was more of him as a person. So what we saw, back from, I don't know, was it the 60s?
Yeah.
He said he felt more like himself doing that role than he did any of the other roles that he had after that. There was at some point he was just tired of doing those roles, as you said, in the westerns, because they were just like back to back to back to back. And it just seems like they were just like throwing the script at him and throwing him out there, and they didn't care about the acting performance. And, for him, that was more of a serious role. He took it very serious.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, that was probably he's probably the most famous doctor most people think of when you think of a doctor, especially television or movie doctors. I mean, he's got a legacy to live on. Now, what does he think of the new Star Trek shows, movies that they've come out with that are kind of going back to that same 60s period, only from a parallel universe? What does he think of those so far?
He's been really excited about the franchise and about where it's gone. He said that when they did the original, for him, it was, a challenge because it was so low budget, and, he was trying to take the role serious. But he says now, they're spending billions of dollars to produce these movies overall, and he's just excited that it progressed to that point. He said that he didn't think it was going to go any further than what it did.
It's amazing what it's turned into. I mean, I've been a Star Trek fan since I was a child, and we're not real familiar with low-budget productions or anything like that. But
no, not at all.
but it was amazing. I mean, they did quite a good job with what they had to work with on the original series. I mean, out of all of them, that's still my favorite. Anytime I see an old Star Trek on, I'm just glued to it, even if I've seen it 20 times before,
He says that they're going to continue this franchise kind of like James Bond. He says that, in the future, there's going to be, more and more and more and more. He said this franchise will never die. There's always going to be fans of this franchise. So, even 50 years from now, we're still going to be watching Star Trek films.
And 50 years from now, there'll probably still be people watching him on TV in the original episodes, too, because they're just timeless,
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Now,
he said that he always believed in extraterrestrials. And he said that that was one of the other reasons why he was so enthused about doing this show was, making contact with other life forms. It was always a dream of his. And so for him, that was kind of like living out a fantasy, but also, reality at the same time.
Well, yeah, and I think that's something a lot of us can identify with. I mean, at all levels, most people inherently you do have that fascination with what else might be out there. Now, has he gotten some of those answers now that he's back on the other side?
He just smiles at me and shakes his head yes.
How has he been occupying his time? Because it was like June of 1999 when he crossed over from stomach cancer.
You know, he really has just been, you know, a part of this whole phenomenon that's happened since he's passed. You know, he spends a lot of time on movie sets. You know, not only from, you know, the Star Trek franchise, but also other movie sets. He says he's kind of like an inspiration to some actors. You know, when they're feeling depressed or sad, he goes to them and just tries to whisper in their ear. He's really close to William Shatner. You know, they did not have a really strong bond when he was alive, he said. But now that he's on the other side, he visits William Shatner quite often.
Okay. I was going to ask about how the kind of off-air relationship was with a lot of the main cast, such as William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, Nichelle Nichols.
He said he wasn't really close to William because he just the personalities clashed. You know, it's always that, you know, William seemed to want to be the star, you know, and he always had himself separated from everybody else. But, you know, in subsequent movies, he said, you know, it wasn't quite that bad, but he still always kept himself distanced. So, you know, even though that they didn't have a strong bond, he says that, you know, he's more bonded with him now than he was when he was alive.
Okay. Yeah, and I can, you know, see that happen. Just like sometimes people that you maybe even family members that you were maybe relatively acquainted with, sometimes you appreciate them more when they pass on also, or you tend to miss them more, or realize more of the role, a bigger role than what you really thought of them. So I can see that. Um, Now also, I've seen a lot of it. We've kind of gotten to some of the original stuff. Does he have much contact with James Doohan?
I would say that I can feel his presence in the room with me as well. You know, James is more of a nature freak, is what I would call him. I wouldn't call him a freak, but just, you know, just very enthusiastic about nature. When I just tried to touch in with him, he was showing me pictures of the highlands, you know, the mountains and the trees and the greenery, and it just seemed like he had a lot of connection to that area of the world. You know, he didn't spend a lot of time there, but yet anytime he had a chance to be outdoors, he was there. You know, that was his big thing. So now that he's on the other side, he has a chance to be anywhere. I believe if you want to contact him, you can find him in the mountains.
Okay.
Not just in Scotland, but everywhere. You know, he's showing me different pictures. I have to readjust myself. I'm sorry, Patrick. He has to. He's showing me pictures of different sceneries, different nature, rivers, streams. You know, I don't know if he was a real activist in the environment while he was alive, but it seems now that he's on the other side, that seems to be what interests him most.
Yeah, his character, Mr. Scott, was always going to be another unforgettable one as well. So it's good to hear he's doing well also. Um,
He says that they fought a lot on set about lines. He said that they were arguing all the time about how many lines each person got. And you know, for him, he had a smaller role, and he just always sat back and laughed. He said, you know, really, I mean, I get as much screen time as I'm supposed to, but you know, Forrest Kelley and maybe William Shatner that might have been part of their issue. You know, why they were on set. You know, like I said, he was kind of alluding to that feud or rivalry between the two of them. And you know, even though William Shatner was the captain, the show wasn't always focused on him.
no, they all really, you know, pulled kind of an equally important part of the show. You know, you really couldn't have just had the show with just one or two of them most of the time. They had a nice cohesion between all of them once you got used to personalities. And I like how Mr. Scott always overshot the amount of time it would take to fix something, even though he knew he'd be able to fix it faster, just to give him that buffer zone. You know, that was always a classic in every episode.
That's funny. Is there anything that you'd like to know more from them before I
Yeah,
let them?
just a couple more things that I know it takes a little bit of energy for them to, you know, be here with us, and definitely appreciate them coming on. Um, Now, I know with Deforest, he died of stomach cancer. What kind of future treatments or solutions do you think they're going to have with such an ailment in the future?
When I touch in with him about that question, I'm just getting a lot of things about nutrition.
Okay.
Watching what we eat and our diet, and he says he wasn't really conscious of his health when he was alive, and that's one of the things that he thinks about now that he's on the other side. So I'm seeing vegetables, I'm seeing like greens and lettuce and broccoli and some of the really roughage. He says that's something that he would definitely recommend for sure.
Okay. And also with James Doohan, I know that he had requested that his ashes be shot into space, and I think Gene Roddenberry had done the same thing.
Right.
Was he happy to see that they did go ahead and fulfill that?
Um, I think for him, he was just he was just happy all the way around. At the end of his life, he wasn't a very happy person. He seemed to have a lot of depression. There seemed to be a lot of memories of the past and what he lost and what he didn't have. And for him, he was just ready to go. So when he was sent to the other side, he was just like, just that sigh of relief.
Okay. So do they want to give us any inside information on aliens or extraterrestrials and their real existence? Any tips on that, or where we might find some?
I think that they're going to hold off on that. I don't hear anything about that, and I think that would be too controversial of a topic. We have had several shows in the past when we were doing just the radio portion of guests. I can think of Ricky on the backside of the moon. It's flashing to my head at this moment, and I think we'll just leave it to those that are alive to discuss that.
um, is there anything either one of them? They had pretty long, full, rich lives, especially with the Star Trek careers. Is there anything they would have still liked to have done they didn't feel like they got to do?
James Doohan, he says he wishes he was closer to his family. He didn't have a lot of people around him when he was ready to pass over. So he said for him, he wishes that he had more people around him. Forrest Kelley, I don't really hear anything from him as far as what he feels that he didn't accomplish. I really think that he felt satisfied.
Okay, now he had a lot. He was married quite a while, and I believe his wife is still alive. So I guess I would assume he kind of frequently checks up on her as well.
I would assume so. He didn't say anything about that, so I would assume so.
Okay. Is there any message they want to deliver to their fans or any advice before we let them go?
I think that really James Doohan has shown me a book. Now, I'm not sure if he published something before he passed, but it just seems like that's really about his life or something about his life in that book. So if there is a book out there, I would definitely read that and just get to know him as a person.
Okay. And as far as DeForest Kelley, any
I didn't really
advice?
hear anything. They were switching back and forth with me, stepping in and out, and I just felt like that was probably the final message.
Okay, well, we want to thank him for definitely showing up, and it was very nice to hear from him. Glad to hear they're doing well.
Well,
Any,
thank you, Patrick, and as always, whether you listen to us in the morning, the afternoon, the evening, have a great day.